Welcome back to the Rise with Anita podcast, or welcome if you're new here. This is a space where ambition meets embodiment, where soul meets strategy, and where we don't just talk about change, we explore who you have to become to actually live in it. Today's conversation is one that feels both deeply grounded and deeply transformative because we're not just talking identity, we're talking about what happens when life forces you to redefine it. I'm sitting down today with Christine Gale, keynote speaker, attorney, identity strategist, just to name a few, has spent decades walking women through some of the most pivotal transitions in their lives and is continuing to do so. And what she's seen over and over again is that moments that feel like endings, divorce, loss, identity, collapse, are often the exact moments where a woman is being invited to rebuild herself or on her own terms. So, this conversation is about reinvention values and what it actually means to lead from your truth, not survival. So, before we dive in, Christine, welcome. I'm super excited to have you here.
I'm so happy to be here with you, Anita, and your community.
Beautiful. So, as I actually hinted off camera, we're going to go ahead and just take a moment to relax. And I'm going to invite you to take a moment to arrive. So, for the listeners, also, if you're able to, just place your feet on the ground, allow your shoulders to soften, relax your jaw because we hold a lot of tension there, and just notice where are you right now. And so we're going to take a breath together, inhaling slowly through the nose for 4, hold for 2, and exhale through your mouth for 6. And again, inhaling for 4, holding for 2, and release your worries for 6. There's nothing you need to fix, nothing you need to figure out. Just allow yourself to be present in this moment. So, welcome. I'm so excited, as I said. But before we dive in, I always start off the podcast with what is bringing you joy in this current season?
Oh my goodness, what is bringing me joy is we have our first wedding. We have 4 daughters. And so, what is bringing me joy is the fact that in less than 2 months, daughter number 2 is getting married, and we just actually had her bridal shower. And so, we're empty nesters and having all 4 daughters and 2 fiancés home. Our house was full and crazy and expensive and loud. And so, in those moments when you can really be present with, I call it a mountaintop moment where all of the hard work, all of the sacrifice comes to a culmination, that is just intense joy.
That's such a beautiful answer. And I know I saw your, I think, Instagram or Facebook stories. You guys were doing all the things together and it looks so
Mhm.
fun. And I can't imagine your excitement as a mom who's now seeing her daughters kick into a new chapter of their lives.
Yeah, it's really powerful, especially, I have such a passion, as you know, for women and such a passion to teach women how to claim their identity, to really own who they are, and to see each of our 4 daughters starting to own themselves and step into these really high callings. One's in physician assistant school, the one getting married just got accepted to vet school, Delaney's running college track, Sophie's finding her way as a freshman in college. And just the joy that I'm experiencing as a mama, watching them take all the things you hope that they're learning, right? As you parent them, you hope to God they're picking up on those nuggets that not only that you say, but more importantly, the nuggets that you live out, and to see that it's very gratifying.
Beautiful. Yeah. I always say, I mean, I'm not a parent, but we learn from things that are actually caught by our parents, not so much what they're saying. So it's
hmm
like, for me, I always look at the resilience of my mom and like how just brave she was to do what she needed to do to raise me as a single mom. But you come back from this like perspective of like, wow, we are literally shaping a generation and it's like a ripple effect. And I think that's so beautiful. And I'm so excited for you because it sounds
Thank
so
you.
fun. What is one thing you were actually really hoping that they would actually gather though from watching you?
Well, Anita, that's such a powerful question. I was a stay-at-home mom. There's a little backstory here. So a little bit of latitude here to lay the groundwork, because it's really important that, to understand what they learned, you have to understand where we came from. So I was a stay-at-home mom for almost a decade, and I had 642 and brand new. So like it was a busy season, right? And I started to feel as I was going along, having the play dates, work, being in the women's ministry at church. I had lots of friends. We were all raising our kids, and I should have felt extremely satisfied. But there was this restlessness, this sense of disappearing that kept coming up for me. And so I actually ended up going back to work in 2010 when I had Sophie would have been 3. So I had 3, 5, 7, 9. And the night of my first day back at work, I was tucking in daughter number 2, the one who's actually getting married, and with big like crocodile tears and a quivering lips, she said, "Mommy, how does somebody get fired?" And I answered very calmly, but inside I was dying, because all of the weight of the guilt and the doubts and the fears, it just came like it was like suffocating. So I put her to bed, was very calm, and then I cried myself to sleep. I literally cried myself to sleep. I thought, what have I done? Well, fast forward, and it's COVID, and our kids are schooling from home, and because we're going through COVID, why not open my own law firm in the middle of this crazy pandemic? I had reached a point where I could no longer work alongside the partner that I was working with. And I knew I needed to start my own thing. And I did it in the middle of COVID. It was bananas. Just bananas. Running trials from my basement like a Chinese teenage hacker was insane. Trying to figure it all out while I know, yeah, it's a great visual. Trust me. I was literally taking my diplomas off the wall in my office and then tacking them up on the wall in the basement to run a trial. It was nutso. But we're badass, right? We're resourceful. I figured it out, but it wasn't without a very high cost. I was being threatened with lawsuits. It was a really trying time. And I was in my office crying to my best friend saying, "What have I done? I never should have left. I wish I'd never started this law firm." And that same little girl who had, with quivering lips, asked me how somebody gets fired 10 years later, she's now 17, pushes a note under my door and says, "Mommy, please don't give up. You are a badass. You can't give up." I still have that note hanging in my office. So what do I want them to see? What do I hope they see? I want them to see a woman who does not define her worth based on circumstances or other people's opinions.
Wow. So much to unpack there, but firstly, your daughter is amazing. I'm sure you already know this.
Pretty cool. She's going to be an amazing veterinarian.
She's pretty rad for such a young soul, but wow. I love that you bring it back to not being defined by circumstance, because how often as women do we do that, where we look at a chapter that might be what I call the messy middle, and we're literally defining who we are and our worth by that, which brings me to another question, which is, how did you start to switch that relationship with your worth?
Oh boy, I tell you, the way I started to claim my worth, own my worth, if you will, was almost by happy accident. My sister-in-law had given me the book by Rachel Hollis called Girl Wash Your Face, and I was like super eye roll. I'm like, whatever. And it was over a Christmas break, 2018. I was like, whatever. But I actually cracked it open, and it was the first time in a long, long time. I have ADHD. I've literally finished that book start to finish. And it wasn't because Rachel Hollis is all that, or the book was all that, although I'm sure, both of those things are true. It was because there was a message in there of wake the hell up, because life is passing you by. And I remember the beginning of 2019, waking up New Year's Day-ish, when you do all the let me look at my year and whatever. And I looked around, Anita, and I realized that all my friendships had disappeared. All my female connections were just gone. And this is from a woman who had been so deeply immersed in my church. Like, we all raised our babies together. We planted our church. I had friends in the neighborhood. But as life progressed and as I navigated some really treacherous waters in my marriage, I had neglected female connection. And so I went on a quest to reconnect with women for 30 days. I had a calendar, and I still have it, where every day I committed to texting, calling, or having lunch or dinner or drinks or whatever with one woman from my life in some circle. And here's why this is so foundational to your question, is it woke me up to a missing piece. I had so neglected what mattered to me that I had become fragmented. And so just by starting to take those steps of reconnecting with other women, it set me on fire to figure out who I was, who I wanted to be, and what I wanted to build.
Wow. And honestly, so I think we talked about it in your podcast when we did it. And women just generally are such communal beings. Like, we are naturally the nurturers. We are naturally the ones who are looking for that connection. I mean, it's a human need. So regardless if you're listening to this, male or female, you need connection. But I think a lot of times with women specifically, what happens is we end up having this, we push our needs for connection unless we're needed. And so
Exactly.
it ends up being this, I don't know how to ask for help when I need it, but if someone needs me, I will be there. And in between seasons where it's just we need to connect, you might push it off or not make time for it because you're not thinking, because you're just
Mhm.
what can I do to be needed? What can I do to serve? And it's interesting that part of how you owned your worth is coming back to that connection and coming back to your circle.
Mhm.
So beautiful answer. I just want to acknowledge, like, I love that it's coming back to like the foundations of everything you teach too, because you're also all about creating circles that empower you and creating an identity that really is that empowered version of you. So I don't know how raw you want to be, but you just touched on your marriage. So for you, who were you in this marriage and in the season that, like, who were you to who are you now? Well, what are the differences between those two women?
Oh, good grief. The difference is it's cliche, but it's night and day. The woman that I was before I began my personal development odyssey, if you will, because I started that journey to reconnect with females the beginning of 2019, started, getting connected to Brendan Burchard and all the people. I feel like they're all spokes on a wheel. They cross pollinate, right? And there's a lot of those similar messages about owning who you are and then building from that place of that inner knowing. And so that led me into the Tony Robbins world, and that led me into all of the ways that you've come into contact with me. But the woman that entered into this personal development journey was hard. She was bitter. She was self-righteous and justifiably so. But she was self-protective, shut down. I like to claim that I was a warrior. That warrior identity actually was a survival mechanism for me because my marriage had been so painful. And we speak very openly about this. I mean, we spoke in a 2.5-hour intervention with Tony Robbins in front of 9,000 people. So why not share with your listeners? My husband was unfaithful 2 times, and we have been battling sex addiction in our marriage. Our daughters know, our family knows. We're very open about it because if we can help others navigate these really treacherous waters, then it gives meaning to the mess, right? And so I had to make a decision about who I was going to be in relationship to things I had no control over. And what happened in my personal development journey, Anita, is that I eventually made a decision. Tony talks about you decide, you commit, and resolve, that I was going to take care of my side of the street, that I was going to tend to my yard, and have a loving, committed, connected relationship with my husband, but only from a place of wholeness. That took a lot of years and a lot of tears. And one of the most pivotal, I always overconjugate that word. I don't know if you do. One of the most pivotal moments was when Tony Robbins during our intervention called me out and invited me to see myself as a victim, that I was claiming that victim mentality. I called myself a warrior, Anita. I'm sure some of your listeners can relate. Like, we call ourselves one thing, but we're really masking another. Because I was really living in that victimhood state. So the woman that I was then, she was a victim masquerading as a savior. And the woman that I am now is aligned and rooted and present and whole. And you just can't compare the two.
Wow, what a beautiful answer. So I'm going to poke a little bit though. When you say you're whole, what does that look like? How did you get to that point where for our listeners who are listening to this, who feel that maybe there's, that sense of it, when you're in the personal development space at first, you feel like there's something broken in you. Now, I always say that you're not broken, you're not meant to be fixed. But how did you get to that place where you actually felt whole, and what did that look like?
That is a very powerful question. That might be like a 3-part series in a podcast, but I'm going to do my best to break it down. And I want to be clear too, because I don't want to speak to the listener who says, well, good for you. Yay. I'll never be whole. Something was taken from me I could never get back. Because as somebody who has survived sexual abuse, who has survived adultery, there are things that you can't put those back. You can't put the genie back in that bottle. You can't always fix those things. So when I say whole, I don't mean that. What I mean, Anita, is that I have everything I need within me now to be the woman that I need to be, to create the impact that I was designed for, and to have joy and fulfillment and contentment. So when I say whole, I mean that I don't need any outside influences or any outside people to give me anything for me to be, do, and have what I want for my life.
Beautiful answer. I love that. And something that I've been working with, because I do study Kabbalah lightly now. And they have this whole principle about operating from wholeness or operating from lack. So what you really so beautifully defined is, when you're operating from wholeness, you are okay with yourself without needing validation, without needing external joy or happiness to come into your fruition. And I think that's so beautiful. Easier said than done, but it becomes a practice that we actually can actively choose. So
Before you run past it, I really feel the need, if I could be so bold as to interrupt you. I interrupted the host. Don't do that. But there's something that you said that was really powerful, and I want to make sure that there's a little practicality to this, because it sounded, even hearing my answer, it sounded a little foo-foo to me. And what I want your listeners to understand is because you said something when you were talking about Kabbalah about the practice. Like, this is a practice because our identity is a series of patterns. And that's great news, because that means we get to rewrite our patterns. We get to interrupt our patterns. Even this morning, as I had a coaching session with my results coach, she told me to cut the crap, because I was saying, I'm so tired of being an action talker, not an action taker. She's like, wow, that's quite an I am statement. And I was like, I'm not drinking my own Kool-Aid. And so this is a process. The reason I call myself whole is because I don't need anything else. I just need to access what's already in there. And sometimes we need that coaching, and we need that connection, and we need those friends to be mirrors. But I don't need somebody to give me something I don't already possess.
Mic drop. Just mic drop right there. There's so much I could rip off of, just off of that statement, but So anchoring back, I'm curious, before you did all the keynote stages and the attorney identity and all the identity work, who are you really?
Who am I really? I am a little girl who grew up on the farm, who was born to do great things. And I am a grown-ass woman who is now doing those great things. I am a mama. I am a wife. I am a kick-ass friend. I am hilarious. I am a party waiting to assemble. I live for other human beings, not because I'm looking to get something, but because they just juice me. I am fascinated by everything. I'm never bored. I'm always excited. I have way too many ideas than I could ever accomplish. And I will be that woman who slides into heaven covered in scars and dirt and mud and a big ass smile. That's me.
I love it. And for those of you who are not watching the video version of this, her face literally like lights up as she owns her identity. And that is how you know she's in alignment.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, thank you. I received that.
of course. So I'm curious, pivoting a little bit, because you are an attorney. And as someone who grew up in the legal field, not as an attorney, but as a paralegal's daughter, what originally drew you into family law of all laws and working so quickly with women who are in transition?
Okay, so this is another one of those happy accidents, although I don't believe in accidents. Obviously, I believe things are divinely appointed. But I genuinely look back on how I went back into the workforce and I just smile and I'm just like, I see you, those little, my best friend, Zakil, she calls them Kawinka gods. And I was literally talking to a soccer parent on the sidelines and it was the dad. And usually the dads talk and then the moms talk, but my husband wasn't there and his wife wasn't there. So we were just chatting and he was doing the sidelines. He turns around and he says to me, would you ever want to go back to work? And I had just been thinking, man, if I could just go somewhere for a few hours a week just to practice law. It was just this happenstance conversation. I said, yeah, but I only want to work part-time. He's like, well, my wife works part-time. And I was like, yeah, well, I don't really have any experience. He's like, she didn't have any experience. So all of those objections, if you will, all of those reasons, those excuses were just knocked down one after the other. So I go on this interview and I think it's for personal injury. And I get to the interview. I'm literally in the interview at lunch. She's like, so would you like to practice family law? And I was like, oh, shoot. I didn't believe in divorce at the time. I was very immersed in my church community. And I was like, I'm not a big fan of divorce, but sure, why not? I literally was like, a sure, why not? And I was getting ready for my interview, I had pulled out my transcripts. I hadn't looked at my law school transcripts in like 15 years. And sure enough, family law was a near perfect grade because I'm fascinated by family law. I'm fascinated by families. I'm fascinated by human relationships. I'm fascinated by just the absolute unpredictability, which also causes a lot of the stress. So it's a both and. And honestly, I love to be a funnel. I love to take all of these words, all of this situation, all of these fact patterns, all of these emotions, and I have this supernatural ability to funnel it down and put it in its legal boxes and then get underneath to what's really going on. And it just lights me up.
That's incredible. So you literally just fell into this industry.
Fell into it. It was a big oopsie.
Big oopsie. You're like, I wasn't planning on it, but
Yep,
God has a way
exactly.
of moving mountains and putting you right where you need to be.
Yes, ma'am.
So at that point, when you're sitting across a woman who's going through divorce, what did you start to notice beneath the legal surface of the situation?
Boy, it's so unique to each woman, but I'll do my best to give you some generalizations that are, I wouldn't say universal, but are frequent. Immediately, I see the broken vision they have of themselves. And when I say broken vision they have of themselves, I don't mean in any way, shape, or form they are broken, but that's how they see themselves. They see themselves as broken. And usually I can quickly identify their fears, their desires, and their stuckness. What's keeping them stuck? And every time I meet with a client, a potential client for a consultation, I always tell them, if you're looking for mahogany offices and somebody to speak at you, I'm not your girl. But if you're cool with the tattoos, the nose ring, and the truth, I'm your girl. And so I serve the whole client. And so I get to know them. And usually I start my consultations by saying, tell me your story or tell me what brought you in. And they're like, I want a divorce. Like they don't always understand. But then as soon as they start speaking, it takes me about 5 minutes to pretty much figure out how I can serve her or whether or not I can serve her.
Beautiful. So do you find that you kind of integrate coaching a little bit into your client situations, even though they're technically two different fields?
Well, it's not a little bit. It's a promise from the consultation because I tell them, I said, there are moments where I will take off my attorney hat and put my coaching hat on because in order to help you make decisions for the two most important things in your life, which is your kids and your money, I need to coach you as a human to make sure that you're making decisions that are aligned with who you are, but not only who you are now, who you are going to be when you get on the other side of this and start the healing process. Because a lot of times I'm dealing with people who have 3, 5, 7-year-old kids, and they're only thinking in this little microcosm. Remember when you were a little tiny thing and the most important thing to you was the Christmas party or the Valentine's party or, just all these little things. And I help them see the bigger picture, not only of bigger kids, but the bigger vision for their lives. And so if they don't want that, then I'm probably not the right attorney for them.
Mic drop again, because it's the expanded. I love that you bring it into the where are you seeing yourself? Because so many times they're letting this one situation define them. And of course, I mean, I have not been married either, but I've seen this time and time again because my mom did practice family law, where when they're going through that transition, it's like they feel like their life is almost over or a piece of their life is over. And in some cases, it is, obviously, but it's like they think that defines them in a way when it's really just a part of their story, not the full book.
Yeah. And I also help them understand that when your marriage dissolves, it is a death of something. And so I remind women to grieve. I don't want them to just survive the divorce. I want you to thrive on the other side. And sometimes they find that they start to thrive even in the middle of it, depending on the circumstances and depending on the woman. But it is grief. And if you don't treat it as grief, then you really are going to have a little bit harder time healing.
Yeah. Interesting. So actually bringing it back to your marriage, how did you get from a place of grieving what was, I don't want to call it loss, but you had that imbalance of trust, obviously, to being able to refine and redefine it?
It's been such a long and winding road. It really, have you ever been to Hawaii? So on the island of Maui, there's what's called the Road to Hana. And it's this picturesque, beautiful road, but there's, I think, over 500 curves. I kid you not. It goes like this, it goes up and down, and then there's waterfalls, and there's, one lane bridges, and it's just the most insane journey. And there's moments where you're like, I got to turn back. You're white knuckling. And then there's moments where you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I kept going and I didn't miss out on this. Well, when you're a marriage healing from adultery, it is not linear. It is not, there's no textbook for it. And you've got two human beings who are acting out of their pain. Because people who cheat, I'm not making any excuses for them. Obviously, I would not be that person. I would never do that. But people who are happy and whole and living in alignment with their true selves don't cheat on their marriage. It just isn't a thing. And so you've got two people in pain. You've got two people dealing with certain elements of shame. And so the healing is jagged. It's difficult, and you make 2 steps forward, and sometimes you make 1 step back, sometimes you make 10 steps back. That has been our journey. It's not like his last affair was in 2014 and we began the journey of sex addiction recovery, and that was insane, and it's a world I wish I never knew existed. But I'm so grateful, Anita, because now I can speak to others, and it's become a fabric of not who I am so much as what I know and what I've been able to let go. And so for us, rebuilding trust is an ongoing, lifelong project. And it will be, because I've chosen to stay, and I'm no fool. I'm no fool. I know, I am eyes wide open. I know the risks I'm taking, And I understand that everything can be pulled out in a minute, in a second. The other thing I want to say, and I think this is really important for your listeners to understand, is when you heal from adultery, it takes two committed humans. One person cannot fix a marriage that has experienced adultery, because it is so treacherous and it is so cut so close to the core of who a woman is, that if you do not have two partners 100% committed to doing the work and being willing to forgive and being willing to be honest, it'll never survive. Or if it survives, it will be a shell of what it could be. For us, I know that I am very blessed because I have a husband who does the accountability, who's done the work, who gets the coaching, who goes to the counseling, and has committed to doing that for the rest of his days. So it hasn't been easy, but I will tell you, Anita, when I look back on my journey, there's not a moment in time when this happened, but I can tell you a time period where it happened. And it's when I joined the True Legacy Collective with Lauren LaHave, and I started getting deeply immersed in this women's community, because I've been part of Unleash Her Power Within. I was a senior mentor. I've made amazing friendships, but it was joining this mastermind of unbelievably badass women that are committed to each other as humans. It was that frequency. It was that connectiveness. It was the trips. It was the true voices. It's the accountability calls. I began to build a life of my own apart from him. And what that also did is it freed him up of the responsibility for making me feel whole and happy. I was happy in myself. And that, to me, has been the number one key to the freedom that I now feel in my marriage.
Wow, so many mic drop moments right there, but I just love that you brought it back to feeling whole. And again, community seems like that happens to be your through line in everything you speak of.
It's my through line. It really is my through line, and it has been the most transformative piece of my life. And it's only been, it's been just a little bit over 2 years that I joined TLC. And that's when everything began to shift. It didn't shift overnight, but that was what shifted me.
Beautiful. So I'm curious, what did all these experiences to really teach you about how women see themselves within their life structures?
Within their life structures, I think that would be a difficult question for me to answer, because everyone's life structures are different. Sorry, I get the lawyer brain sometimes, and I don't mean to talk about your sentence. I realize what I did there.
It's okay.
Didn't mean to do that, but I think it's important, because the crux of your question is, what did it teach me about how women see themselves? And it's so intriguing that you'd ask that right now. This is why, again, one of those Coinca gods, because I had 2 conversations already with women. I'm a people person, as you can probably tell, and I'm always in communication with women. As long as I make myself present, my cup runs over. I had 2 conversations today with women in my Mic Drop Academy. It's a speakers cohort I'm a part of, and had them today. And both of these women are so badass. They're extremely successful. One's a lawyer, one's a speech pathologist. I mean, these are women writing keynotes, wanting to be front facing. And both of them today apologized to me for how they looked on camera. And we were just having a Zoom call. And what struck me, the reason I brought this up in the context of your question, Anita, is that women are ruthless with themselves, but so willing to be generous with other women. And so I said the same thing to both of these women today. I said, if I might just ask you not to speak to my friend like that. And it stopped both of them in their tracks. And I said, why are you coming underneath your brilliance and pulling your own rug out from under you with your words? And they both stopped and said, I didn't realize I did that. And I said, aha, because women in community with other women, we get to be mirrors and spotlights. And so what I said to both of them is, I said, this is something I've worked on over the years. And even this morning, my coach told me, How are you talking about yourself? And then I was able to pay it forward, or pour into them that same thing. So for me, what it taught me is that we're not meant as women to do this life in vacuums. We are not silos. We're community. And when we're in community, that's when we rise. That's when we start to see each other, or see ourselves rather, through the eyes of other women that are in alignment with where we're going. And when you do that, it's game on.
Beautiful answer. See, so as much as you thought you had your attorney hat on, you still have a great through line of, again, it comes back to community. Every single time that you're answering, it comes back to community. And I just want to acknowledge this because I feel like so often a lot of women think that they have to do everything alone. That it's literally the opposite. It's like wherever you want to go, find a woman who's either there or going there and just grab on and go.
And you know what's so powerful about that? I want to make sure I do this caveat because I know I'm speaking to women like me that love big communities, but I'm also speaking to that woman who's like, I'm not really into the group thing. It's a little intimidating for me. And I just want you to hear, I'm not saying you have to have a community like of a lot of women, but just don't go it alone. So if you're watching this on video, you'll see behind me, there's this little statue. Do you see that statue behind me, Anita? And it's this gorgeous white statue of a woman, and she's kind of sitting there. She has no face, but you can almost feel her solitude. And that's the reason I have her there, is not only because I freaking love her, but this statue, and I have one over there you can't see, it's that same thing, that solitariness. I was solitary when I was abused as a child. I was solitary when I was navigating the adultery in my marriage. I was solitary when my self-esteem was plummeting and my weight was going up and my inflammation was systemic. And it's when I came to realize that the connectiveness with other women, that's when I started to settle. That's when I started to feel hopeful. That's when I started to feel more expansive.
Wow. Beautiful answer. And wow, I just have so many thoughts right here. I'm just gonna say, it's funny that you bring up the solitude because, again, when we try to go out to something completely by ourselves, it doesn't always pan out the way we think it will. So it's like, I like that you brought up, like, you don't need a massive big group, but find somebody you can rely on. And so I think that's a beautiful through line. And now I'm curious, shifting gears again a little bit, where do you see women unintentionally abandoning themselves in the work that you're doing?
In their language. Absolutely. I mean, there's a number of ways, but if I can pick one, and it's the one that, in my opinion, is one of the most insidious, damaging things that women do to themselves, to their mission, to their relationships, to their health, is how they speak about, and you can fill in the blank. How do I speak about my body? How do I speak about my voice? How do I speak about my skin? How do I speak about, my abilities? Even me just this morning telling my coach, I feel like an action talker and not an action taker. Like, what am I doing? I'm not listening to my own counsel. So for me, women abandon themselves by the words they choose to describe themselves and what they attach I am to.
Beautiful. And that brings us right into identity, which is a big, big passion of yours.
Yes.
If you had to give one tactical, practical tip to a woman who's in this shift from who she is, where she wants to change, to where she wants to go, which I personally usually believe that there's something that is already inside of us that is calling us forward, but maybe we're not acting on it. So the tangible question here is, what is one way that you would tell her this is the path to shifting your identity to start embodying that new version of you?
The one tool that I have found, not only for myself, but also for the masterminds that I've led, is a tool that I created called the Infinite State Shift. And it is something that is so practical and tactical, and you can do it in an instant. And it's modeled after Tony Robbins, after of his triad, which I couldn't relate to. It's very masculine. It's a triangle. It's like you do this, you do this, you do this. So that's not how women think. Women are not waffles. We are plates of spaghetti. And everything that we do is you can't still, well, one thing begins, you're pulling the noodles. Oh, I thought that was that noodle. No, it's this noodle. So what I did is I took that beautiful concept and I created a tool, and I'll be happy to share it with your listeners. You can put it in the show notes. And I made it really pretty, of course. It's an infinite sign, an infinity sign rather. And I made it rainbow because I love rainbows. And I made it, it's watery because women don't have hard edges. Now we can be hard, but women's emotions, women's approach to things, and I'm generalizing here, it's pretty fluid. And so this tool for women, a woman who wants to either reclaim her identity, find her way back to her core, or maybe for the first time ever, figure out who she is, or maybe she wants to reinvent herself. This tool is magic, and it's 3 parts. The first one is what Tony Robbins calls physiology. But for me, it's like, how do I hold my body? How do I move? That's step 1, because pay attention. And I promise you, if you go out in the stores, if you go to your kids' soccer games and you just watch how women stand, their shoulders are often slumped. Their voices are quiet. Their heads are down. The breathing is shallow. And I know look at how you started the podcast. How we choose to hold our vessel is the opening for the kind of state we want to bring to our lives. So I say shoulders back, pardon my language, tits up, and I want you to breathe deeply. Stand like the queen that you are even before you feel like her. That's the first step. So how do I hold my body? How do I move? And if you're not moving your body every day, start there, because if you're just sedentary, you're not going to be able to show up with vigor and energy and enthusiasm for your identity. And then the second part is focus. Where are you focusing? What are you looking at? Because what we look at and focus on gets bigger, right? So are you looking at what's wrong, what's outrageous, what's frustrating, what's depressing? Because good Lord knows there's plenty of that to go around. But like Tony says, what's wrong is always available, but so is what's right. So you can choose to say, it's really gloomy out. It is gloomy out here in Chicago today, but you know what I see when I look out the window? I see my beautiful, vibrant pink crabapple that's blooming early because we've had all these beautiful warm days. Which mindset do you want to live within? Well, it's probably going to rain today, or be like, that tree is gorgeous. We're looking at the same day, but we're focusing on something different. And then here's that powerful thing. And it's the connective piece in my tool in the middle of the infinity sign. And the reason I don't do it as step 1, step 2, step 3 is because sometimes women need more focus on or emphasis on one part of this infinite state shift. And it's, how do I speak about ... So if there's one part of this that I could say, obviously you should be moving your body and standing and watching your focus, but pay attention to the words that come out of your mouth. And if you could do that for 7 days, just listen to yourself. You're going to get so much information that you're going to know where you need to start.
Cool. That's incredible, just seeing how you made it so fluid and like taking that through line. Because as feminine beings, we tend to be a little more fluid and more all over the place is the way I like to kind of say it, because
we are beautifully messy, because putting us in a box is just not going to work.
Well, funny enough, I did another podcast today, and it was, her whole thing is, there is no box.
Only a box if you choose it.
Right. So it's like coming from that perspective of like, are we now actually finding ourselves in our own containers, or are we allowing ourselves to walk through the door? And so many thoughts I have right here, right now, but I'm going to just reel it back in for a quick second, because what I really like is how you keep bringing up how you speak about yourself and how you speak about just circumstance. And one rule I've actually started to implement in the house is I don't want to hear complaining. And so I've made it where it's like, I don't want you to complain, but on the front end, I was like, I can't tell you what to do and not do it. So I'm holding myself to that same standard, which
Mhm.
brings me into raising standards. What is a tangible way that a woman who's maybe in transition, she hasn't seen aspects of like her life fully play out, but she knows that in order to get to where she wants to go, she needs to make changes. How does she begin to raise the standards of who she's becoming now?
That is a fire question. And the answer is actually so manageable. You literally strap your work boots on and start stepping. And it sounds so funny, but I give people metaphors and imagery and word pictures because, again, we're women. And if we can attach the words or ideas to actual pictures in our mind, we're much more likely to anchor it in that moment where we have to make decisions. And this is where I want the women that are listening to really hear, and men too, because it's universal. It's those 2 millimeter shifts, baby. You do not go out and lose, like, I'm going to lose 100 pounds in the next month. Well, that's fantastic. That seems a little ambitious. Or I'm going to go from 0 to $15,000 this month. Okay, awesome. But what if you made 5 calls today? You know, what if you made 2 yesterday? How about you make 5 today? I'm going to call it a mistake, but it's more got a little overly ambitious early on in my personal development journey. Is I set such lofty goals, and I'm not against lofty goals. I'm a lofty goal setter, but I set such lofty goals that I took my eye off the steps in between. And so I'd get so discouraged because it would feel so out of reach. So if a woman wants to raise her standards, for example, in her marriage, stop nitpicking the crap out of everything he does and start paying attention to what he does that doesn't annoy you. Because I would imagine if you are paying attention and on the hunt, I tell people, like, put on the goggles. If you put on the goggles for what he does right, you're going to find it. There's plenty that he does wrong, and the things that he does, wrong, or things that you don't approve of. If you want to raise your standards in your business, decide what you really want and make one step in that direction today. So it's those baby steps, Anita. So when a woman wants to raise her standards, first of all, fuzzy targets don't get hit. So you have to actually create the targets and then give yourself grace to just start stepping.
Beautiful answer. And one thing that I keep thinking as you said that, especially the fuzzy targets don't get hit, is if you don't know clearly where you want to go, God, universe, whatever you call it, your higher power, isn't going to unfold a map of how you're going to get there. You have to first know what you want in order to have that bridge to get there. So
Exactly.
beautiful. You talk a lot about values-driven leadership. So what does that actually look like in a day-to-day life in terms of how you operate?
Well, for me, and I know I've been blessed because I've been doing Tony Robbins work for several years now, but it's so manageable for anybody. You don't have to take the programs, although I highly recommend them. But I want to share what really changed me, and it was I've done 4 Date with Destinies now. I think I've done 4 Date with Destinies, which is Tony Robbins' signature program. I think that's what he would call it. And in Date with Destiny, have you done it?
Absolutely, twice.
Okay, I couldn't remember.
It's incredible. Yeah.
It is incredible. And I will say, if I look back on my personal development journey since 2019, and it's not even really that long. I mean, it's been, 7 years? But only 4 years or 5 years of doing Tony Robbins work. This has been the biggest game changer for me. And it was the towards values, identifying your towards values. And this is where it's powerful, identifying your away values. That's when I was like, oh, mind blown. So it's really exciting to do your towards values, right? I am curious. I am love. I am warmth. I am grace. I am open. I am presence. I am playful. I mean, I can rattle them off because I've done incantations and I've gotten them into my body. But when you start to do those away values, those things you will no longer tolerate, it's like, ooh, that hits up against some things. Like for me, I will no longer tolerate the debilitating and unacceptable value of disrespect. That was a game changer for me. So, what is values driven leadership? It is when you are anchored into the values that you will not compromise, and you are aware of and committed to no longer tolerating the ones that aren't in alignment with who you are, that's when you are a values driven leader.
Mic drop right there. And, one thing I want to take for a second for the listeners who haven't done Date with Destiny, you will find when you're writing these lists out, as we've both done, where what your towards values are and your away values are will literally be like contradictory. And
Yep,
you can
polar
really see a
opposites.
direct through line of
Mm-hmm.
why you might not getting a certain result
Yes.
because you have these like conflicting values of like
Mm-hmm.
that directly go against it. Like the easiest one that comes to mind is people who are in like a sales role who are like, I want to hit a certain monetary goal, but then at the same time, they're afraid of rejection. That's not going to work.
Not going to work. Or people who want a thriving marriage and I am loving, I am gracious, I am present, but then you're disrespecting and you're, doubting your spouse. Those two things cannot coexist. And it takes practice, Anita. As you know, as somebody who's done Date with Destiny, for me, the biggest game changer with Date with Destiny wasn't doing that work. It was doing the incantations after that work. It was being that crazy lady walking down the street saying, I am love. I am grace. I am present. I am open. And I would say it over and over and over with different emphases. And it sounds wonky. I don't care because I am building my destiny. I am creating a life. I am becoming the leader that I am meant to be. And I cannot do that if I don't get these values in my bones so that when life happens, when business shows up, when opposing counsel is a total jackass to you, sorry, swear. It's sorry, not sorry. I don't yell at him because I'm grounded. I don't react out of frustration because I know who I am and I know who I'm no longer willing to be. That's values-driven leadership.
Beautiful. I am just so mind blown. And I'm glad that I brought this question into it because how often do women like make decisions and we're not thinking about, is this really even aligned with the values, where I want to go, where I want to be?
Yeah.
And so I'm curious in your perspective, what happens in what shifts in a woman when she starts making decisions from her values rather than her fears and her survival mode?
Well, we're going to have truth talk here. What happens is sometimes conflict. More often than not, conflict. Because when you've been living out of alignment and inconvenience for others, you're going to have a little bit of that rub. You're going to have that resistance, whether it's at work, whether it's at home, in your parenting, in your relationship with your mom, which is my case. You might have that friction. But if you're committed to living a life of alignment, they'll all get over it. They'll get used to it, and it's worth it. So what shifts in a woman when she starts living in alignment and she's willing to accept that friction might be part of the process, she sleeps a hell of a lot better. She isn't afraid to ask for that raise. She's willing to ask for what she needs in the bedroom. She's no longer willing to allow her teenager to disrespect her or to go out into this world and bring shame to her family because they're acting out of alignment with the values that she's put in them. And she stands for truth, and she stands for righteousness, and she stands for the values and the life that she's designed. That woman, she's got a clear conscience.
Oof. I love that you brought in the truth talk because I feel like so many times, especially when people are new in this personal development space, It's like, I want to live in alignment, but I also don't want to ruffle feathers. And unfortunately, you can't have those two coexist. It's usually like I have to make some uncomfortable decisions and conversations and whatnot in order to get to that next level. So it's just love it. Um, and you've worked in high level legal fields and now you're completely leading in a different way. What did actually breaking your own ceiling look like for you?
For me, breaking my own ceiling, I can trace it to the moment that I left my old partnership and started my own law firm. It was one of the scariest things I had ever done because this person that I was in business with, she took all the risks. Her name was on the building, but she was also one of my best friends. But as the years wore on, our values started to fray, especially because I started doing my personal development work, started figuring out my towards values, my away values, and I knew that I was no longer in alignment with this person and I needed to leave. And in that moment, I knew she had gotten wind because it's a small legal community. I had a feeling she had gotten wind that I was thinking about leaving, and she made me this offer, you can work from home and you can have this and that. And I remember sitting in her office, listening to her talk, and I just turned to her and I said, I'm done. I need to leave. And it was such a both and, Anita. It was so terrifying because she had for years taken all the risks, had told me I wasn't a businesswoman, said, don't worry about it. You're not good at that stuff. You can't figure that out. I'll do it. I'll protect you. And basically what she was doing was enabling me, but also using me. And in that moment, I owned power I didn't yet feel like I had.
Hmm. Wow. So you were literally stepping into alignment and purpose while bracing against fear. And one thing I really want the listener to take away from this is she didn't necessarily feel ready as she was making that decision.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, if you looked at the odds of, oh, you don't know how to run a business, let me just take care of this. That's not a person that would automatically go into, oh, I can do this. But she started taking the action before she was ready, and she started to put those values into place where, coming back to that through line of, she was making decisions from a new state. So that's incredible.
Thank you.
Of course. I just want to acknowledge, like, it takes a lot of bold movement for you to get to that phase.
It was terrifying. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to say, oh, this was so easy. It was one of the hardest things I literally have ever done. And I had a lot of doubt and I had a lot of fear and I had a lot of regret at times. And now I look back and it was one of the best decisions. No, it was the best professional decision I've ever made because not only am I more prosperous, but I have more freedom and now I'm building and I could not become the woman that I needed to be and the leader that I wanted to be if I had stayed in an environment that kept me small.
Mic drop again.
Well, I'm here to serve.
So for the woman who's listening right now, who's in some sort of transition, whether that's divorce, career shift, identity shift, what is the one thing that you would say start off from here first?
Some of it is probably situation specific in terms of the transition they're going through. For example, if it's a woman who is asking a man for a divorce, the one thing I would say to her is create your divorce tribe. Create your tribe of women that will tell you the truth, not fluff you up, but tell you the truth as you navigate this incredibly uncertain and scary transformative journey. If you're going through a transition such as empty nesting, which I am a newly minted, very content, very happy empty nester. My daughters hate when I say that, but it's true. Make a life. Decide what you want for yourself without considering anybody else. Imagine what that would be like and then write that shit down and put it where you can see it because you are more than the people that you serve. You are the only person you're guaranteed to be with for the rest of your days. You're the only person whose head always hits the pillow. You're with you. So choose, decide. Don't fret. Don't hand wring. Don't, sit there and binge Netflix, although I love a little Netflix binging. But decide what you want and then take one concrete step in that direction.
Beautiful. And to wrap it up, I'm going to just ask, what is one way you're living in alignment right now?
Oof. I got to pick one, huh?
Yeah.
One way that I am living in alignment right now is in the way that I am connected to my female communities. I have different communities. It's not just one. It's local friends. It's my sisters-in-law. It's my TLC mastermind sisters. It's my TLC leadership group. It's a smaller group. It's my Mic Drop Academy sisters that I'm just getting to know. I am living in alignment because I am always on the hunt for female connection, and not just to get, but to give. And it's beautifully reciprocal, and it's completely in alignment.
Beautiful answer. Where can people find you if they want more?
Well, I am the host of the Girl Out of Order podcast. So please tune in. I'm having this beautiful woman on the podcast. Let's see. Did I put your date down? I do have a date for you. So I can announce that on June 2nd, Anita will be on the Girl Out of Order podcast. I was like, pretty sure it's on my sticky note here next to me. So I am the host of the Girl Out of Order podcast. So please follow us. And I also can be found at thechristinegale.com. That's my website. Give me grace. It's under construction. So we are building, and you can reach me on all the socials. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and definitely very present on LinkedIn. I'm happy. I'm building a coaching practice. I'm open to new clients. I haven't really put that out there yet, but reach out to me. I'm very easy to find.
Beautiful. And I always end with a quick fire round. So
boy, there's more.
Just wait, there's more. So think one word to one sentence, real quick answers, first thing that comes to mind. Are you ready for me?
I am ready.
A book that's changed your life.
Girl, wash your face.
One word that describes your current season.
Abundant.
Beautiful. Daily non-negotiable that fuels your power.
Exercise.
Song that instantly lifts your mood.
Sweet Child of Mine.
Oh, beautiful. Best advice you've ever received in a single sentence.
Oh, goodness. You said one word. Now you want a whole sentence? Promises, Anita. Ooh, that one, you got me stumped. You know how hard it is to stump the lawyer? That's impressive. Best advice I've ever gotten in a single sentence. You are limitless, from my mom.
Beautiful. And lastly, what is one thing you want women to stop apologizing for?
Anything that isn't worthy of an apology.
Beautiful answer. Well, this conversation feels like such a powerful reminder that what may feel like an ending is often an invitation to redefine who you are and what you stand for truly. And because how you choose to live the moving forward is the impact that you're actually going to make. Your identity isn't fixed. It's something we are constantly in relationship with. And the most powerful thing you can do is to choose it consciously. So if something in this conversation landed for you, if you feel seen, challenged, or expanded, let that be your starting point. Not to rush into change, but to begin asking yourself, who am I becoming here? So Christine, thank you for your wisdom, your work, and the way you guide women back to themselves. And if you're listening, your life isn't over just because something ended. It might just be the beginning. And I'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you, my friend.